lived in my current house in North Carolina for about 3 years. When I first moved in, I had all kinds of weird encounters at night. I'd be outside burning off tree limbs and things like that. I always felt like something was watching me. After the first few days, I heard what sounded like a muffled voice calling for help from the woods that surrounded my house. I shrugged it off. After a few more times of that, I was walking along the tree line outside of my property, and I had a 30-30 shell thrown at me. Keep in mind, this was 1 to 2 a.m. I also do not own a 30-30, so this was very odd to me. Anyway, this goes on for a few months, and my ex came in and brought our kids with us to live. My ex had chickens and a pig that eventually got out of their enclosure and were killed. She threw the carcasses into the woods. I don't know why she did that either, but after all the spooky stuff stopped. No more eerie feelings, no noises, nothing. Now fast forward to last month. I've since gotten a new girlfriend, and she takes our dogs out in the early AM hours before she leaves for work. I leave around 4:15 a.m., so it's probably about 5:30 a.m. or so when she's out with them. Twice in the last 2 months, she's seen what she's described as something large and pale in the wood line. The first time was last month. It saw her and hurried off. This morning, as she's walking the dogs, our large dog was barking like crazy, and she saw a white creature again. She said it moved like it was scuttling, larger than a deer and on all fours, but what looked to be mostly human-like. As soon as the dogs got a good look at it, they tried to run back to the house. She and the dogs flew back inside. We haven't seen anything since. Around 2 years ago, one of my friends was moving from Appalachia to Florida in a few days, and we decided to go catfishing before he left. We didn't catch anything that night on the river, and we left around 2 or 3 a.m. On the drive back, we hit fog. I remember the window was cracked because I was smoking a stogie. My friend was half asleep in the passenger seat, but still conscious. I had just looked up from changing the song on my phone, and right in front of the car is what I could only describe as a shadow being. It was tall and stood on 2 legs. It had no color or details, just a black void in the shape of an upright silhouette. It was right in front of my headlight, too. It still didn't show any detail. The thing about this whole experience that terrified me the most was that after it had passed us, it smacked the weeds and tall grass on the side of the road so hard that it made a loud sound because of how fast it was moving. Hearing that noise, coupled with what I just saw, sent a chill down my spine. My friend and I didn't say much, except to confirm to ourselves that we indeed saw what we had just saw, an Appalachian Shadow Man. I've never seen something like that before, or since. Everything started the night after my fiancé saw something unexplainably creepy at the skate park near the woods while walking the dogs. We were walking our 2 dogs, and we planned to go down to the skate park to train our dogs' agility some more. The park is small, only consisting of about 3 medium ramps and one that barely reaches mid-shin on myself. The skate park is down in a sort of valley, and we have to go down some steps to get into it, and it's surrounded by woods at all sides. As I was about to suggest going down, I noticed that my fiancé was stood still, staring into the skate park while mid-panic attack, and the dogs were in front of them, staring on and off, with the smaller one fixated and pulling. They said, "There's someone down there," but when I went to look, I didn't see anyone or anything down there, and it was dead quiet. "No, there isn't. I looked and I can't see anyone." "No, seriously, there are people down there. It's a fucking cult or something," they said, half joking and half panicked. "We need to go home." I was confused and thought their mind was playing tricks on them because it was dark, and I still wanted to go down, like something was inviting me. That's what it felt like in hindsight. In the moment, it felt like something was making me feel annoyed and frustrated by not being able to go down there. "No, come on, there's no one down there. It's okay, we can go run with the dogs." No, I want to go home. Seriously, please, can we just go home?" They mentioned they heard a scream coming from the woods, but again, I heard nothing. and the second time they heard it, they turned and walked off quickly, and I followed. For the rest of the night, they were really uneasy to the point that I was worried for them. They were drawing what they saw, trying to make sense of it, while struggling to make sense of it themselves. Talking about demons, nuns, deers, goat skull-headed men, etc. It creeped me out, and I asked to drop the topic, but I knew something wasn't right. The next day, it was okay. Taking the dogs for a walk, the usual amount, feeling better about the whole situation. Then I heard something. The first time I heard it, it was around 3 a.m., and I heard what sounded like a drunk or heavily injured man screaming for help. Nothing specific, just, help me, help me, any occasional screaming. It circled our housing complex and got louder right near the window by our bed. I got up to look out the window and I saw a figure. It looked like a man in a gray tracksuit with his hood up, and he was walking away from us about 200 to 300 meters away from the window. Staggering, drunk or injured, but seemingly unbothered, still screaming, help me. The thing is, the screaming was completely emotionless and uninterested. It stopped shortly after I saw the figure. The second time was around 8 a.m. the next day, the same emotionless screaming circling the house that lasted for about 5 minutes before cutting off mid-scream. I chalked it up to just some drunk kid wanting to scare people or causing a scene. Or perhaps it was someone with mental health issues having an episode. I then heard it a few hours later as I left to walk the dogs coming from the forest that our front door overlooks. Still emotionless and the same words, help me, help me. There were 2 men by the road fixing up their bikes and people on their balcony smoking, but no one seemed to hear what I was hearing, so I carried on ignoring it. It didn't stop for the 10 minutes that I was out there letting the dogs go to the bathroom. Carried on even as I entered the house. It eventually stopped and some family came over to visit. But when I walked out of the house to get a drink from the shop, I heard it start up again. It started the second I opened the door and didn't stop even as I was walking down the stairs to the shop, or as I came out of the shop and walked into the house. It carried on for 5 minutes after I entered the house again and just repeatedly screamed, help me, please, and continued on screaming. At this point, my brain's repeating it as if it were tinnitus. It hurts more and more. The screaming, help me, help me. The same order over and over and over again. I'm getting a migraine while typing this because the screaming just won't stop. It keeps getting louder and I don't know what to do or why it's happening or what could be doing it. Last year, in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, I took my girlfriend out on a hunting trip. A couple hours in, and we weren't really seeing anything, so I bent down to grab a beer, which was on the other side of my girlfriend. As I came back up, I glanced out the window to see if there were any deer, but I saw a tall, lanky, pale, and bald creature running through the woods faster than I have ever seen. I would have to say it cleared a 100-foot section of woods in at least a couple seconds. Luckily, it never saw me, or so I think. It looked like it was trying to run behind the blind. Safe to say my girlfriend and I got the hell out of there ASAP with a fully loaded 30-30 and not much else. Not that it would have done much to that thing. The scariest part about this story is that my girlfriend finally got to see it with her own eyes, running across the highway right by my land. This, of course, means that it's still stalking the area around my woods. This was a few years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. A friend and I were in the woods, just taking a hike. While on our way, we noticed the forest had gone completely silent, and there was a chill to the air that hadn't been there earlier. Now, I live in the northern Georgian mountains, so a sudden change in the weather isn't that strange. Well, this was different. Along with the silence, there was a sense that something was very wrong and that danger was near. It was such a strong feeling that we became frozen with fear. It all came to a head when our eyes caught movement behind a tree. After a bit of context, the air had gotten so cold that we could see our breath, and it was August. What we saw was a creature that had a deer skull for a head, with antlers that extended more flat out than up. and a pitch black cloak that seemed to suck up the daylight. It became visibly darker. It had bone hands with claws at the ends that it had stretched around the trees that leaned around to stare at us, with its pitch black eyes that felt like a void of darkness and terror. We could see its breath in the chilly air, and as it stared at us both, we had this complete belief that if we had turned our backs on it and ran, that we would have disappeared forever. After what felt like an hour, but was maybe just a few seconds, it seemed to have gotten or done whatever it wanted and leaned back behind the tree and just disappeared. The temperature had returned to normal, and so did the sounds of the forest, slowly but surely. My friend won't talk to anyone about it, and I've only ever told one person about what I saw that day. It was so terrifying, and I won't ever forget what I saw. It'll forever haunt my dreams and memories. If you liked the video, remember to like and subscribe. And remember, watch your back. Toodaloo.